usually start with stretching. You know, it's just like, again, we've used the analogy of an athlete, but you know, before I sit down and play, I'll just kind of fool around with separating the fingers a little bit and stretching the wrist out. And it's not only the hands and the fingers and the wrist, but it's really the whole body, because you're playing with your shoulders, your torso, so forth. But I like to do that for a few minutes, 3 or 4 minutes, you know, maybe find some ways to just keep stretching. It's just like yoga, isn't it? You know, it just relaxes you a little bit and gives you a good feeling to get going. I learned an exercise from a teacher. She was a Juilliard graduate and a brilliant, brilliant player. I bought a new piano at the time, and I had a mutual friend, and he brought this person. Her name was Louise Barfield. And he said, you know, you should really get Louise over here and just listen to her play. And I did, and she was like incredible. You know, she's doing this Scriabin piece that was just impossible. And so I said to her, look, I can't really read music, but I'm off for about 3 or 4 months. We're making a record. I don't have to tour. I've got a little time. Do you think there's any way you could help me with my technique? And she said, well, let me think about it. She called me back. She said, yeah, I got some thoughts about it. So here's some things that she showed me that have been very, very useful. And some of you may have seen these, so pardon me if you're already familiar. But the first exercise she taught me was what we'll call the diminished exercise, and that is to make the diminished chord with all 5 fingers. Try to relax your hand, keep it relatively low to the keyboard, keep all the keys depressed, and then at 1 finger at a time, throw your energy into that 1 note. Do it 4 times each, making sure you keep the hand as relaxed as possible. And a major feature of this exercise, Louise said, make sure that as soon as you throw that energy in, and you're really throwing it from your torso, not just from the hand or arm, relax. And she would hold my arm like this, and you know, when I first did it, not relaxing. I can feel that tension in your arm. You gotta let it go. That's extremely useful, because who was it? I think it was you saying that you get tired sometimes doing these figures. This exercise helps to teach you to relax while you're playing and to save that energy for when you really need it. Now, so you start with the pinky. The 4th finger is always the hardest to get that thing up. And then you do all 4. Right, the thumb I usually try to stretch out to the right with the left hand. And then you go back, after you've done all that, to adjacent fingers. Right? Relax, relax, relax. And then 4 times each on all of those, right? And then you do every other finger. So you're doing that. Try to do it cleanly, and of course you do it with both hands. Now, you come in the next day, you change the diminished chord, go up a half step. And that just gives you a different position, sometimes very challenging. But that really, it provides a great start for before you really start playing, because it loosens those hands up, it stretches the hands, and then sometimes I'll just fool around with that whole. But it spreads the hand out, and it kind of gives you a good stretching exercise. After that, I'm a Hammond addict. I'll tell you, Hannon addict. There's so many other Pishna and Chernzi, and if I'm pronouncing that correctly, and other methodologies. But Hannon, the first 20 exercises, I'm sure you've all seen the book. You know, it goes beyond the 20 exercises. But you know, and so forth. That's the first exercise. Louise said, do it with the left hand first, you know, and then the right hand, and then both hands together, and do it in every key. And that's the real trick, because when you get to some of these more challenging keys, what I usually do is start in C. I do it 2 octaves, separating the hands with 1 octave, so I'm, you know, 2 octaves above. Should be doing it with a metronome at a comfortable pace. 2 octaves up. Try to keep it even, because sometimes you tend to go. Keep it. Speed it up, as you get better at the exercise. So forth. But, then I usually I do it in 5th, so the next time I'll do it in G. And then to D. And some of those exercises are so important, especially for developing the 4th and 5th fingers, because those are the real challenging fingers, for me anyway, I think for most of us as piano players. And there's 20 exercises. That's a long time to try to do 20 exercises every time you sit down at the piano in every key. It's very time consuming. I'll try to get through 3, maybe 4 exercises a day, and then move on to the more difficult ones, and then maybe by the time I get to the 20th exercise, the next time I do it, I may try to do 5 or 6 exercises and get through them. Or I may pick a key, for instance, that I'm having difficulty with and work on that particular thing. Again, using the metronome is very, very important. Keeps your playing even, and gives you kind of an inner tempo, if you will. Okay, there's another exercise that Louise showed me using octaves. Basically, the way you do this is have your hand up in a kind of a relaxed fist position, and then throw the hand down to make an octave. And again, it's the energy and relax. And then, when you're doing the black keys, you use your 4th finger instead of the pinky, because when you're doing octave runs, it makes it a little easier to get from one place to another. So doing those, again, 4 times each, and then every key 4 times, and then right hand, of course, same thing. It takes a little time, but it's well worth the effort. And then, maybe just fool around with some octaves. Throw in a little blues lick. I demonstrated this thing earlier about the tenths, and I find that very useful as an exercise as well too, because it really does sometimes hurt. It just and then maybe a little walk down. Maybe a little movement. To the 5 where you got a 7 chord spread out. Quite make that, did I? And then, we haven't talked much about stride, but that can be very useful, where you're doing octaves and various chords afterwards. And again, this is something I find it's, if you just do it with one hand, with the left hand to get that going, before you introduce. throwing in some of those tents every now and then. So let me demo this one a little bit. This is a James Booker tune that I'll try to struggle through. James Booker, if you don't know who he was this amazing prodigy that learned the classical repertoire and then learned jazz and Ray Charles and everything else. He had a song called Keep On Gwine, and he would do these elaborate arpeggios in the beginning. He'd do this stride thing. So on and so forth. So.